Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about what to do after Kriya yoga techniques. So students often ask what to do after Kriya yoga techniques when they are just sort of sitting there in meditation. And so Kriya yoga is a very effective means for getting into a state called pratyahara, which is elucidated by Patanjali, the ancient sage, in his Yoga Sutras. And basically pratyahara means internalization. And so the goal of Kriya yoga, in particular Kriya pranayama, is to induce pratyahara, and that gets you into an internalized state. Now, some Kriya yoga schools have more effective techniques for the Kriya pranayama and associated practices than other schools do. And the reason for this is because some schools have stripped away bits of Kriya yoga that have made it not as effective as the original. So consequently, students may experience a common trajectory where they're doing their Kriya yoga techniques, and then after they do the Kriya yoga techniques, they're just sort of sitting there. And they're wondering, what do I do? I've done my Kriya pranayama, I've done all the other practices around that, and I just sit there. And so some Kriya yoga schools have called this sitting in the stillness, right? And what often happens, from my experience of being associated with some Kriya yoga schools, is that folks will do their technique, their practices, and then they can sit there for a while and they can be still, and then they start fidgeting around. And the reason is because the body is starting to feel uncomfortable. One's mind is starting to wander. And consequently, one is not having a deep meditative experience. If anything, it's kind of degrading. The experience is degrading. And then so some students have said, well, what do we do? Some schools will say, hey, focus on devotion, focus on making your connection with the divine, making this heartfelt connection, and as if that can bring one into a deeper meditative state. Now, it's possible this may happen, but usually it doesn't. What usually happens is that people work themselves up into an emotional fervor and thinking that this is a deeper aspect of their meditation just because they're feeling these feelings in their heart. But it doesn't really improve their meditative experience as actually getting into deeper meditation. And so Lahiri Baba, in his guidance, Lahiri Baba is the originator of Kriya Yoga, and in his guidance, he basically said 12 Kriya equals pratyahara. So 12 repetitions of Kriya pranayama equals internalization. In other words, about 5 minutes of doing the Kriya yoga pranayama should create these feelings of the pratyahara, these feelings of internalization. And we know that Kriya yoga works directly on the body's parasympathetic nervous system. It helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and to slow down the heart rate and the breath. And as a result, what happens is people start to get a physiological response in the body, which we call the freeze response, which is synonymous with pratyahara. So these tingling throughout the body is a sign that the parasympathetic nervous system is becoming predominant in the body, and one's breath slows down, one's heart slows down, the heart rate slows down, and then one gets drawn within. So the body starts to feel tingly, and then it eventually sort of disappears from our awareness, right? We're going inside. This is a sense withdrawal, if you will. And so we know that if Kriya yoga is done correctly, as per Lahiri Baba's instructions, one should be starting to get signs of pratyahara, signs of the freeze response, in about 5 minutes, 12 Kriya, right? So folks who are having challenges in their Kriya yoga practices, this is often the reason why, because they don't have as an effective technique, or they're not practicing the technique correctly to allow this pratyahara to start to manifest in about 5 minutes. Now, it doesn't mean it's full pratyahara necessarily, although it will happen with some folks. But what it means is that you start to feel those signs in the body. So with some Kriya yoga schools, people will be doing excessive numbers of Kriya, excessive numbers of Kriya pranayama, expecting that that will lead them into a deeper and deeper meditation. If the technique is sound, yes, it will, but you don't need to be doing 108 or 144 Kriyas for this to happen. It can happen, starts to happen, as Lahiri Baba said, in 12 Kriya or less. So Folks who are spending a lot of time in meditation and not getting a response from the body, this beginnings of pratyahara, likely the reason is because the technique needs to either be tweaked, done more correctly, or maybe the technique that you have is not as effective as the original. Now, there are different lineages in Kriya Yoga, and they will teach different types of the practices. Some people stripped out bits of the practices and started teaching them in these modified forms because they found it challenging to teach that aspect of the practice, that particular technique, but the result is a degrading of the Kriya Yoga. And then as a result, students are not getting into pratyahara in 12th Kriya. Regardless of the effectiveness of your particular Kriya Yoga technique, what do you do after you've done your Kriya technique? What do you do, right? Sitting there in stillness. Well, as I said, some schools will advocate for bringing in devotion, right? And all these kind of things, which really just end up stirring up the mind. And that's not what you want at all. What you want to do is to progress into deeper meditation so that you start to get into a sense withdrawal, that the mind calms down and becomes very still. From that place, basically, you will start to be able to perceive deeper elements of yourself and of the universe at large. Spiritual phenomena, if you will, these subtle phenomena that will emerge in your meditation. So it is normally advised that when students, after they do their Kriya Yoga techniques, they sit in something called paravasta. Now, paravasta is a Kriya term for these after effect poise state of your Kriya, meaning that you'll start to feel it in your body in some way. What you're experiencing in these cases predominantly is the effect of the parasympathetic nervous system becoming predominant, the freeze response. You start to feel these pleasant sensations in the body. So that is where you want to place your attention after you've done your techniques, is on paravasta. Now, there is two distinct elements, at least at the initial stages of paravasta, that you want to become aware of. The first is these pleasant sensations in the body, the freeze response. You may feel these pleasant sensations in the area of your heart. It could be the area of your face. It might be an area in your hands, your throat, etc. You want to become aware of that pleasant sensation, right? And it can be experienced as this glee or rapture feeling, especially if the feeling starts to spread beyond the initial sensation that you have in one area. So as that sensation starts to spread, that glee, that rapture feeling, that pleasant sensation starts to spread, your body becomes immersed in that feeling. So that is the first distinct element of paravasta that you want to become aware of. As that feeling spreads, that pleasurable sensation starts to permeate throughout your body, you may start to feel another sensation which is a little more subtle than that, which exudes from that feeling of glee or rapture, and it is this joy or happiness that starts to emerge. And if you place your awareness on that feeling, the glee, rapture, pleasurable sensation of the body, plus the joy or happiness that exudes from it, and allow yourself to become immersed in that entire feeling, you start to go into a deeper meditative state. So this is an aspect of internalization of the pratyahara, where the bodily sensations start to emerge, where the joy or the happiness start to manifest from that. And some people have described this as bliss, to the point where you can become very absorbed in them. So that's really what you want to do, is to, after the Kriya Yoga techniques, to shift your awareness away from the practices, away from observing the breath, into the bodily sensations of paravasta, right? These feelings of the glee or rapture emerging from the body, and then the joy or happiness that exudes from that. And from there, you will be led into deeper and deeper elements and stages of meditation. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.